The December rain drummed against the tall windows of Adelaide Cottage as Catherine sat at her writing desk, fountain pen hovering over cream-colored stationery. The dying embers of 2025 seemed to whisper through the glass, carrying with them memories of a year that had reshaped everything she thought she knew about duty, family, and her own strength. William stood behind her, his hand resting gently on her shoulder as they both gazed out at the frost-covered gardens of their Windsor estate. "Do you think we're ready for this?" Catherine asked softly, her voice carrying the weight of months of careful planning and soul-searching. The letter before her was addressed to King Charles, formally requesting expanded roles and responsibilities that would fundamentally alter their position within the royal hierarchy. It represented not just ambition, but a carefully considered evolution of their service to the crown and the British people. William squeezed her shoulder reassuringly. "I think we've never been more ready," he replied, his voice steady with conviction. "This year taught us that waiting for permission to make a difference isn't always the right approach. Sometimes leadership means stepping forward when the moment calls for it." The year 2025 had indeed been transformative for the Prince and Princess of Wales. Early in the year, Catherine's health scare had forced them both to reevaluate their priorities and approach to royal duties. The months of treatment and recovery had been challenging, but they had also provided unexpected clarity about what truly mattered to them both individually and as a partnership. The enforced slower pace had allowed them to spend quality time with George, Charlotte, and Louis, deepening their family bonds while also giving them space to dream about their future contributions to the monarchy. During Catherine's recovery, William had taken on additional responsibilities with a grace and determination that surprised even longtime royal watchers. His natural leadership abilities had shone through as he represented the family at state functions, took on patronages, and began developing his own vision for how the monarchy could evolve to meet the challenges of the 21st century. The experience had given him confidence in his own judgment and a clearer understanding of the kind of king he hoped to become one day. Catherine's return to public duties in the autumn had been met with overwhelming support from the British public. Her carefully planned appearances had shown a new depth and authenticity that resonated powerfully with people from all walks of life. She had spoken more personally about mental health, the importance of family time, and the challenges of balancing public service with private life. Her honesty had created stronger connections with the charities and causes she supported and had inspired a new generation of young people to engage with royal patronages and community service. Now, as they prepared to enter 2026, both William and Catherine felt ready to take on greater responsibilities and implement the ideas they had been developing throughout their years of service. The letter Catherine was composing outlined their proposal for expanded roles that would allow them to take on more substantial projects, engage more directly with government initiatives, and represent the crown in new and meaningful ways around the world. Their plan was ambitious but carefully thought through. William wanted to focus on environmental initiatives, working closely with world leaders to promote sustainable development and climate action. His passion for conservation, inherited from his father but expressed in his own unique way, had evolved into a comprehensive understanding of how the monarchy could use its soft power to influence positive change on a global scale. He envisioned royal visits that weren't just ceremonial, but that would result in concrete partnerships and commitments to environmental protection. Catherine's interests had crystallized around early childhood development, mental health awareness, and supporting families facing various challenges. Her own experience as a mother, combined with her education in art history and her natural empathy, had given her unique insights into how creative approaches could support vulnerable communities. She wanted to develop programs that would have lasting impact, rather than simply lending her name to existing charities. Together, they had identified several areas where they believed the monarchy could be more effective and relevant to modern Britain and the Commonwealth. They wanted to modernize the way royal patronages operated, bringing more accountability and measurable outcomes to their charitable work. They envisioned using technology and social media more effectively to reach younger audiences and engage with people who might traditionally feel disconnected from the royal family. The children had been part of their planning process in age-appropriate ways. George, now a confident young teenager, had shown genuine interest in understanding his future role and had asked thoughtful questions about duty and service. Charlotte had surprised them with her natural ease in public situations and her genuine curiosity about different cultures and communities. Louis, still young but observant, had absorbed lessons about kindness and responsibility through watching his parents navigate their royal duties. William and Catherine had spent considerable time discussing how their expanded roles would affect their children's upbringing. They were determined to provide George, Charlotte, and Louis with as normal a childhood as possible while also preparing them for their future responsibilities. This balance would require careful planning and strong boundaries around their private family time. The cottage around them reflected their values and priorities. Unlike the grand staterooms of palaces, Adelaide Cottage offered them a more intimate setting where they could focus on family life and personal reflection. The walls were decorated with family photographs and artwork created by the children, alongside more formal portraits that acknowledged their royal status. The space represented their attempt to blend their public roles with their private lives in a sustainable and healthy way. As Catherine finally began writing, her words flowed with the confidence that had grown throughout the challenging year behind them. She wrote about their gratitude for the trust placed in them, their commitment to serving the crown and the people, and their vision for how they could contribute to the monarchy's future. She outlined specific proposals for new initiatives, expanded international engagements, and innovative approaches to their existing patronages. William read over her shoulder as she wrote, occasionally suggesting changes or additions. Their partnership had strengthened through the trials of 2025, and they now worked together with an intuitive understanding of each other's strengths and perspectives. They had learned to leverage their different skills and interests to create a more powerful combined impact than either could achieve alone. The letter also addressed practical considerations about security, staffing, and coordination with other members of the royal family. They had learned that good intentions needed to be supported by solid planning and clear communication with the palace hierarchy. Their proposals included detailed timelines and budgets, demonstrating that they had thought seriously about the implications of their expanded role. Outside, the winter evening was settling over the grounds, and inside the cottage, the warmth of their family life continued around them. The children were finishing homework and preparing for bed, their voices creating a cheerful backdrop to their parents' serious planning. This juxtaposition of family normalcy with royal responsibility represented the balance that William and Catherine hoped to maintain throughout their expanded duties. As Catherine sealed the letter, she felt a mixture of nervousness and excitement about the response it might receive. King Charles had been supportive of their ideas during informal conversations, but this formal request represented a significant step forward. They were asking for more than additional duties. They were proposing a new model for how senior royals could operate in the modern world. William took the sealed envelope and placed it carefully on the hall table, ready to be delivered to Buckingham Palace the following morning. "Whatever happens," he said, turning back to Catherine, "we know we're moving in the right direction. This year has shown us what we're capable of when we trust ourselves and each other." Catherine nodded, feeling the truth of his words. The journey through 2025 had been difficult at times, but it had also revealed strengths and possibilities they hadn't fully appreciated before. They had learned to be more authentic in their public roles, more strategic in their planning, and more confident in their ability to make meaningful contributions to the causes they cared about. The transition from 2025 to 2026 represented more than just a new year. It symbolized their evolution from dutiful junior royals following established protocols to confident leaders ready to shape their own destiny within the constitutional monarchy. They had maintained deep respect for tradition while developing their own voice and approach to royal service. As they prepared for bed that evening, both William and Catherine felt a sense of anticipation about what the new year might bring. They had laid the groundwork for change through months of careful planning and relationship building. Now, they were ready to see whether their vision would be supported and whether they would have the opportunity to implement the ideas they had developed together. The last day of 2025 was approaching, and with it would come new possibilities and responsibilities that could transform not only their own lives, but also the way the monarchy engaged with the modern world. They had chosen to step forward boldly into an uncertain but promising future, guided by their shared values and their commitment to service that went beyond mere obligation to become a genuine calling. The call from Buckingham Palace came on a crisp January morning, just 5 days into the new year. Catherine was helping Charlotte with her riding boots when William's private secretary knocked gently on the kitchen door of Adelaide Cottage. The formal invitation for an immediate audience with King Charles carried an urgency that made both their hearts race with anticipation and nervous energy. Within hours, they found themselves in the familiar yet imposing setting of the king's private study at Buckingham Palace. Charles sat behind his antique desk, their letter open before him, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he studied their proposals with the careful attention he brought to all matters of state. The room smelled of old leather and the subtle scent of the king's preferred cologne, creating an atmosphere that was both intimate and formal. "Your timing is remarkable," Charles began, looking up at his son and daughter-in-law with a mixture of pride and contemplation. "These proposals align perfectly with discussions I've been having with the Prime Minister and senior Commonwealth representatives. The monarchy needs fresh approaches to remain relevant and effective in addressing contemporary challenges." Catherine felt a flutter of hope mixed with apprehension. She had expected a longer deliberation process, perhaps months of bureaucratic review and careful consideration. The king's immediate positive response suggested that their ideas had struck a chord with broader institutional thinking about the future of the royal family's role. William leaned forward slightly, his natural instinct for diplomacy guiding his response. "We've tried to be thoughtful about how our expanded roles would complement existing structures rather than disrupting them," he said. "Our goal is to enhance the monarchy's effectiveness while respecting the wisdom of established traditions." The king smiled, recognizing his son's careful political language, but also sensing the genuine passion behind the formal words. "I appreciate your diplomatic phrasing, William, but I'm more interested in your authentic vision. The monarchy has always evolved to meet the needs of each era. Perhaps it's time for another significant adaptation." Over the next 2 hours, they engaged in the most substantial discussion about royal duties and responsibilities that any of them had ever experienced. Charles shared insights from his decades of experience, including mistakes he had made and lessons he had learned about balancing personal convictions with institutional obligations. He spoke candidly about the challenges of modernizing ancient traditions without losing their essential meaning and value. Catherine found herself contributing to the conversation with increasing confidence. Her perspective as someone who had joined a family from outside, combined with her experience as a mother and her natural empathy for people facing various challenges, offered valuable insights that complemented the institutional knowledge of the two men. She spoke passionately about the potential for royal patronages to create more meaningful and lasting change in communities across Britain and the Commonwealth. The discussion revealed that the palace had been quietly developing its own modernization initiatives, some of which aligned perfectly with William and Catherine's proposals. There were plans for increased engagement with environmental organizations, expanded mental health awareness campaigns, and new approaches to supporting young people in developing countries. Their letter had arrived at exactly the right moment to contribute to and accelerate these existing plans. Charles explained that the international situation had created new opportunities for the monarchy to play a more active role in diplomacy and global leadership. Several Commonwealth nations had specifically requested increased engagement from the younger generation of royals, recognizing their appeal to diverse audiences and their ability to connect with people across cultural and generational divides. The king had been looking for the right moment and the right approach to respond to these requests. "Your mother would have been very proud of what you're proposing," Charles said quietly, his words carrying deep emotional weight. "She always believed that the royal family should be a force for positive change, not just a symbol of tradition. You're finding ways to honor that legacy while creating something uniquely your own." The mention of Diana brought tears to Catherine's eyes and visible emotion to William's face. They had both felt her influence in developing their approach to royal service, drawing inspiration from her authentic connection with people and her willingness to tackle difficult subjects. Hearing Charles acknowledge this connection felt like a blessing on their efforts to modernize their roles while honoring the best traditions of royal service. By the end of the meeting, they had received not just approval for their proposals, but enthusiastic support for an even more ambitious program of activities than they had originally envisioned. Charles announced his intention to formally expand their roles with new titles and responsibilities that would be announced to the public and Parliament in the coming weeks. The changes would position them as senior working royals with increased autonomy and resources to pursue their initiatives. The practical implications were significant. They would receive larger budgets for their charitable work, expanded staff to support their activities, and access to government resources for international engagements. More importantly, they would have greater freedom to develop their own programs and partnerships without requiring approval for every detail from palace administrators. As they left Buckingham Palace that afternoon, both William and Catherine felt overwhelmed by the magnitude of the opportunities that had just opened up for them. The conversation with Charles had exceeded their highest expectations and had revealed possibilities they hadn't even considered when writing their original letter. The drive back to Windsor gave them time to process what had just happened and begin discussing how they would approach their expanded responsibilities. Catherine worried about managing the increased workload while maintaining their commitment to family time and the children's normal development. William was energized by the prospect of implementing ideas he had been developing for years, but was also aware of the increased scrutiny and pressure that would come with their elevated status. Their first major test came sooner than expected. Within a week of their meeting with the king, they received an invitation to represent the crown at a major international summit on climate change and sustainable development. The event would require extensive preparation, coordination with government officials, and the kind of high-stakes diplomatic engagement they had been hoping to take on. Catherine threw herself into preparing for the summit with the same thoroughness she brought to all her royal duties. She read briefing papers on environmental policy, met with scientific experts, and studied the positions of various participating countries. Her background in art history proved unexpectedly valuable as she explored the cultural dimensions of environmental protection and sustainable development. William's preparation focused on the political and economic aspects of climate policy. He spent hours in meetings with government ministers, environmental organizations, and business leaders, developing a comprehensive understanding of the British position on key issues. His natural ability to synthesize complex information and communicate it clearly made him an effective advocate for the policies he supported. The children were fascinated by their parents' preparation for the summit. George asked detailed questions about climate science and showed genuine interest in understanding how political decisions could address environmental challenges. Charlotte was intrigued by the international aspects of the summit and enjoyed learning about different countries and cultures. Louis, though still young, absorbed lessons about caring for the environment through family discussions and activities. The family's approach to environmental responsibility had evolved throughout their preparation for the summit. They made changes to their own lifestyle, implementing sustainable practices at Adelaide Cottage and incorporating environmental education into the children's learning. These personal changes gave authenticity to their public advocacy and demonstrated their genuine commitment to the causes they were promoting. As the summit approached, media attention intensified around William and Catherine's expanded roles. Royal correspondents speculated about the implications of their increased responsibilities and analyzed every detail of their preparation and public statements. The coverage was generally positive, with many commentators praising their serious approach to substantial issues and their apparent readiness to take on greater challenges. Behind the scenes, palace staff worked tirelessly to coordinate the complex logistics of their international engagement. Security arrangements, diplomatic protocols, and media management all required careful planning and execution. The success of this first major initiative would influence public and government perception of their capabilities and commitment to their expanded roles. The night before their departure for the summit, William and Catherine had dinner with the children at Adelaide Cottage, maintaining their family routines despite the significant changes happening around them. They explained to George, Charlotte, and Louis that they would be traveling to represent their country and their grandmother's legacy of service, but that their most important job would always be being a loving and supportive family. As they tucked the children into bed that evening, both parents felt the weight of responsibility that came with their new roles, but also the excitement of finally having the opportunity to implement the ideas they had been developing together. The journey from their letter-writing evening in December to this moment of departure for their first major international engagement had been remarkably swift, but they felt ready for the challenges and opportunities that lay ahead. The summit in Copenhagen had exceeded every expectation. As William and Catherine's plane touched down at Heathrow Airport 3 days later, they carried with them not just the satisfaction of successful diplomatic engagement, but also concrete commitment from world leaders and international organizations that would shape environmental policy for years to come. The Danish Prime Minister had personally thanked them for their contributions to breakthrough discussions on sustainable development, and the Secretary General of the United Nations had invited them to consider expanded roles in global environmental initiatives. Catherine stared out the plane window at the familiar landscape of home, still processing the intensity of the previous days. She had addressed a plenary session of world leaders on the intersection of mental health and environmental challenges, drawing connections that had never been formally recognized in international policy discussions. Her presentation had been met with standing ovations and immediate requests for follow-up meetings with ministers and officials from dozens of countries. William had co-chaired working groups on renewable energy financing and had helped negotiate agreements that would provide billions of pounds in funding for environmental projects across the developing world. His ability to understand complex financial arrangements and communicate them clearly had impressed seasoned diplomats and had established him as a serious voice in international environmental policy. The success of the summit had immediate implications for their roles at home. Upon their return, they found their schedules filling rapidly with requests for meetings, speaking engagements, and consultations on policies related to their summit contributions. The British government wanted to leverage their newfound international credibility to advance domestic environmental initiatives, while opposition parties sought their input on alternative approaches to climate policy. More significantly, the international attention had elevated their profile within the Commonwealth. Several Commonwealth heads of government had approached them during the summit with invitations for state visits that would focus on environmental cooperation and sustainable development. These invitations represented opportunities for the kind of substantive international engagement they had been hoping to pursue, but they also carried significant responsibilities and expectations. The children had followed their parents' activities through carefully curated news reports and family discussions. George had been particularly interested in the renewable energy discussions and had started his own research project on solar power for his school science class. Charlotte had focused on the cultural exchanges that had taken place alongside the formal negotiations, and Louis had simply enjoyed seeing photographs of his parents meeting with important people from around the world. Back at Adelaide Cottage, the family settled into new routines that accommodated the increased demands of William and Catherine's expanded roles while preserving the family time they all valued. Mornings began earlier, with both parents reviewing briefing materials and speaking with staff before the children woke up. Evenings often included discussions of the day's activities and planning for upcoming engagements, but they maintained firm boundaries around weekend family time and school holiday periods. Catherine found herself drawn increasingly into mental health advocacy on an international scale. Her personal experience with the challenges of public life, combined with her natural empathy and communication skills, had made her an effective advocate for policies that addressed mental health challenges across different cultures and economic situations. She was invited to contribute to policy development for several international organizations and was asked to consider chairing a new global initiative on mental health awareness. The invitation to chair the Global Mental Health Initiative represented exactly the kind of opportunity she had hoped for when they first wrote to King Charles. The role would involve working with governments, healthcare organizations, and advocacy groups worldwide to develop comprehensive approaches to mental health support. It would require extensive travel, significant time commitments, and the kind of high-level responsibility that she had been preparing for throughout her years of royal service. William's environmental work was taking on similar international dimensions. His success at the Copenhagen Summit had led to invitations to join advisory boards for major environmental organizations and to participate in ongoing policy development processes. He was particularly interested in initiatives that connected environmental protection with economic development, recognizing that sustainable approaches needed to be economically viable to gain widespread adoption. The couple's expanded roles were attracting attention not just from international organizations, but also from British institutions and organizations that wanted to benefit from their increased profile and credibility. Universities were offering honorary positions. Think tanks were seeking their participation in research projects, and major corporations were proposing partnerships that would advance their policy objectives while providing platforms for royal advocacy. Managing these opportunities required careful consideration and strategic planning. William and Catherine worked closely with palace staff to evaluate each invitation and proposal, considering not just the immediate benefits, but also the long-term implications for their roles and responsibilities. They were determined to maintain high standards and to ensure that their participation would result in meaningful progress on the issues they cared about. The process of selection and prioritization was complicated by the genuine enthusiasm they felt for multiple initiatives and the recognition that their expanded roles came with obligations to be responsive to legitimate requests for their participation. They developed criteria for decision-making that prioritized projects with clear goals, measurable outcomes, and strong partnerships with credible organizations. One of their most important decisions involved accepting invitations for extended Commonwealth tours that would focus on environmental and mental health initiatives. The tours would take them to countries across Africa, Asia, and the Pacific where they would engage with local leaders, visit projects supported by British aid programs, and participate in regional conferences on sustainable development and mental health policy. Planning for these tours required coordination with the Foreign Office, Commonwealth organizations, and local governments in each country they would visit. The logistics were complex, but the potential impact was enormous. They would have opportunities to influence policy development, strengthen diplomatic relationships, and demonstrate the continued relevance of the Commonwealth in addressing contemporary global challenges. Catherine's preparation for the tours included intensive study of local cultures, languages, and social conditions in each country they would visit. She wanted to ensure that her advocacy for mental health awareness would be culturally sensitive and practically relevant to local circumstances. Her approach impressed government officials and advocacy organizations who appreciated her thorough preparation and genuine commitment to understanding local perspectives. William focused his preparation on understanding the economic and environmental challenges facing each region they would visit. He studied development projects, renewable energy initiatives, and conservation efforts, looking for ways that royal advocacy and British government support could contribute to existing local efforts rather than imposing external solutions. The children were included in preparation activities appropriate to their ages. George learned about the countries his parents would visit and developed presentations for his school about Commonwealth relationships and environmental challenges. Charlotte focused on cultural aspects and created art projects inspired by the different regions. Louis simply enjoyed the excitement of planning and looked forward to hearing stories about his parents' travels. Family discussions about the tours revealed the maturity and thoughtfulness that the children had developed through exposure to their parents' royal duties. They understood that these trips represented important work that could help people in other countries, but they also expressed their feelings about missing their parents and their hopes for maintaining close family connections despite increased travel schedules. William and Catherine were deeply moved by their children's understanding and support for their expanded roles. The conversations reinforced their commitment to maintaining strong family relationships while pursuing their public duties, and they developed specific plans for staying connected with George, Charlotte, and Louis during their travels. As the departure date for their first major Commonwealth tour approached, both William and Catherine felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness about the scope of their new responsibilities. They had achieved more than they had dared to hope when they first wrote their letter to King Charles, but they also recognized that their success will be measured not by the opportunities they received, but by the results they achieved. The tour would be a crucial test of their ability to fulfill the expanded roles they had requested and received. Success would open doors to even greater opportunities for international leadership and influence, while failure could limit their future effectiveness and credibility. They approached the challenge with the same careful preparation and mutual support that had characterized their approach to royal duties from the beginning of their marriage. The evening before their departure, they had dinner with King Charles at Clarence House, where he shared advice drawn from his own decades of international engagement and expressed his confidence in their ability to represent the crown effectively on the global stage. His support and encouragement gave them additional confidence as they prepared to embark on the most significant undertaking of their royal careers. The Commonwealth tour had transformed everything. 6 weeks across 12 countries had yielded results that exceeded every expectation and had established William and Catherine as genuine forces for change on the international stage. As their final flight approached London in early April, they carried with them signed agreements for environmental initiatives worth billions of pounds, commitments for expanded mental health programs affecting millions of people, and invitations for ongoing collaboration that would shape their roles for years to come. Catherine gazed down at the English countryside from the plane window, her mind still processing the magnitude of what they had accomplished. In South Africa, she had helped launch a comprehensive mental health training program for healthcare workers that would serve as a model for similar initiatives across the continent. In Malaysia, she had addressed Parliament on the connections between environmental degradation and community mental health, leading to new government policies that integrated these concerns for the first time. William had achieved equally significant results in his environmental advocacy. In Australia, he had helped negotiate a groundbreaking agreement on renewable energy cooperation that would connect British technology companies with Australian renewable energy projects. In Kenya, he had witnessed the launch of conservation initiatives that he had helped design and fund, creating sustainable livelihoods for local communities while protecting vital ecosystems. But perhaps most importantly, they had discovered their unique effectiveness as a team in international diplomacy. Their different strengths and interests had proved complementary in ways that enhanced their individual impact while creating new possibilities for collaboration between traditionally separate policy areas. Government officials and international organization leaders had repeatedly commented on the fresh perspectives they brought to complex challenges. The success of the tour had immediate consequences for their roles at home. Upon landing at Heathrow, they learned that the Prime Minister wanted to meet with them immediately to discuss how their international success could support broader British foreign policy objectives. The Foreign Secretary had prepared detailed proposals for expanded roles in Commonwealth relations, while the Environment Secretary sought their input on domestic climate policies. More personally, the tour had deepened their partnership and strengthened their confidence in their ability to make meaningful contributions to global challenges. They had faced difficult situations, navigated complex cultural sensitivities, and achieved results that would have lasting impact on millions of people. The experience had proved to themselves and to skeptics that their expanded roles were justified by genuine capabilities and commitment. The children had followed their parents' travels through daily video calls and carefully selected news coverage. George had created detailed maps, tracking their movements, and had researched each country they visited. Charlotte had collected photographs and stories from their various engagements, creating a comprehensive scrapbook of the tour. Lewis had simply counted the days until their return and had prepared welcome home gifts for both parents. The family reunion at Adelaide Cottage was emotional and joyful. William and Catherine had missed their children intensely despite the exciting nature of their work, and the children had felt their parents' absence despite excellent care from nannies and grandparents. The experience reinforced their commitment to balancing international responsibilities with family obligations and led to new policies about travel schedules and family time. In the weeks following their return, requests for their participation in international initiatives multiplied exponentially. The United Nations invited Catherine to serve as a special ambassador for mental health, while the World Bank sought William's participation in a major initiative on sustainable development financing. Commonwealth governments submitted formal requests for follow-up visits and expanded cooperation on the initiatives launched during the tour. The volume and significance of these opportunities required careful evaluation and strategic planning. William and Catherine worked with expanded teams of advisors to assess each invitation and develop frameworks for prioritizing their international engagement. They established criteria that emphasized measurable impact, sustainable partnerships, and alignment with British foreign policy objectives while preserving their independence and authenticity. One of the most significant developments was an invitation from the G20 countries to participate in a new initiative on global mental health and environmental cooperation. The initiative would combine Catherine's expertise in mental health advocacy with William's environmental leadership to address interconnected challenges that required coordinated international responses. Participation would involve regular meetings with world leaders, input into policy development processes, and oversight of implementation programs across multiple continents. Accepting the G20 invitation would represent a new level of international responsibility and influence for both of them. They would be participating in discussions traditionally reserved for heads of government and senior cabinet ministers, contributing to decisions that affected billions of people worldwide. The opportunity was extraordinary, but it also carried risks and responsibilities that required careful consideration. The decision-making process involved extensive consultations with King Charles, government ministers, and senior palace officials. Everyone recognized the unprecedented nature of the opportunity and the potential benefits for British influence and Commonwealth relationships. However, there were also concerns about the constitutional implications of royal family members taking on such direct roles in international policy development. After weeks of deliberation and negotiation, they received approval to accept the G20 invitation with carefully defined parameters that respected constitutional limitations while maximizing their potential contributions. The arrangement represented a new model for royal engagement in international affairs, balancing tradition with innovation in ways that could influence the monarchy's future evolution. Preparation for their G20 responsibilities required intensive briefings on global economic conditions, international law, and diplomatic protocols. Catherine expanded her studies to include international mental health policy and cross-cultural approaches to psychological well-being. William deepened his understanding of global environmental economics and the intersection of climate policy with international development. The preparation process also involved developing new working relationships with government departments and international organizations. They established regular consultation procedures with relevant ministers and created communication channels that would allow them to stay informed about policy developments while maintaining appropriate independence from partisan political positions. Their first G20 meeting was scheduled for late May in Tokyo, where they would present joint proposals for integrated approaches to mental health and environmental challenges. The presentation would be their debut on the highest stage of international diplomacy, and its success would influence their credibility and effectiveness in future engagements. As they prepared for Tokyo, both William and Catherine reflected on the remarkable transformation that had occurred in their roles and responsibilities over the previous months. The journey from their December letter to King Charles to their upcoming participation in G20 deliberations had been swift and dramatic, but it had also been built on years of careful preparation and steady development of their capabilities and expertise. The changes in their roles had also affected their children's understanding of their family's responsibilities and their own future obligations. George was beginning to understand the significance of his eventual role as heir to the throne and was asking more sophisticated questions about duty, service, and leadership. Charlotte was developing her own interests in international affairs and cultural exchange, while Louis was simply absorbing lessons about kindness and responsibility through family discussions and activities. Looking ahead to the summer of 2026, William and Catherine could see a calendar filled with opportunities that would have been unimaginable just months earlier. Their success in expanding their roles had created momentum that was carrying them toward even greater responsibilities and influence. They had established themselves as credible voices on issues that mattered to them personally while serving broader institutional and national interests. The transformation of their roles had also strengthened their marriage and partnership. Working together on international initiatives had revealed new dimensions of their relationship and had created shared experiences that deepened their mutual respect and affection. They had discovered that their different strengths created synergies that enhanced their individual effectiveness while building something greater than the sum of their separate contributions. As they prepared for the Tokyo G20 meeting and looked forward to the expanded international role that lay ahead, both William and Catherine felt profound gratitude for the opportunities they had been given and deep responsibility for using those opportunities wisely. They had succeeded in their goal of expanding their contributions to royal service, but they had also discovered that success created new obligations and expectations that would challenge them in ways they had not fully anticipated. The bold new royal era they had envisioned was now becoming reality, bringing with it possibilities and responsibilities that would shape not only their own lives, but also the future evolution of the monarchy itself. They had taken their first steps into a future that would require all their capabilities, dedication, and mutual support, but they faced that future with confidence born of proven success and shared commitment to service that transcended personal ambition to become a genuine calling to make a positive difference in the world.